Of November 7th, I think we may have a new president, and I don't know who it is, and I don't want to know yet. And I'll tell you why. We're still talking about equanimity. And I would like to, I'm setting the motivation today to have an equanimous mind. And so I'll wait till after this talk to find out. And why would that be the case? That I might want to wait. So Lama Yeshe has said that equanimity is actually a very advanced practice, which we don't usually think of because it's the first step in terms of, when we want to develop bodhicitta. Before we even go into the steps of developing bodhicitta, we have to have an equanimous mind. We have to work on equanimity. So then we think, oh, okay, that's the beginning, no problem. We might think that, even if we know that's not the case, we still might feel that, And actually, when we run into problems, we might come to learn that thought, or that, we have something around that going on. That's what I wanted to talk about today, is that it's the case that all of the most profound teachings are taught in the beginning in Buddhism. And we don't usually kind of grok that. And so, and naturally we want to get to the goal, so we want the advanced practices as kind of a natural thing for many of us. Although I think also there's many of us who keep trying to find where's the beginning, how do I start? But still there's that tendency. And Daishin Rinpoche said, that when we, I'll read it the way he said it and then say what I have to say. It's said that it is the preliminary practices, and for him he identified namely taking refuge in reflection on impermanence, that are the profound doctrines. So the preliminary practices are the profound doctrines. All the profound doctrines are given at the beginning, and the advanced practices are just natural consequences of those profound insights. And there's the important point, the reorientation of the mental energies that occur at the preliminary stages. So the basis of our building up to the various practices in the Buddhist tradition are the preliminaries. We need to develop the realizations and redirect our energies. And this is, really something to think about, how when we're thinking we should be farther along, or, any of those kind of thoughts, we have to have the actual realizations. And so that's something that our teachers are warning us can get in the way, and they do it in a number of ways. So then he repeats this same point in another way, that without the preliminary practices being thoroughly affected by them, unless we're thoroughly affected by them, the advanced practices, there can't be any advanced realizations. So it's like, they say, climbing a staircase. We may want to get to the top, but we have to take the first steps to get there. And then Pabonka Rinpoche made the same point, and then he took it a little bit farther by warning us what happens if we don't do this. And so this is, although we're focusing in this little series on equanimity, because that is it's a deep practice, it's an advanced practice to actually have that developed in its entirety. I mean, I think you have to be pretty far along the path to have an equanimous mind all the time. What do we learn? Well, you'd be, how far along? You'd be way beyond an Arya, because even they have things come up. They haven't gotten rid of all of their anger yet. Maybe an Arhat might have, but an Arya hasn't. You can have spontaneous bodhicitta and still have afflictions. So you can still have anger arising even when you're a bodhisattva. So it's a pretty advanced thing to have an equanimous mind, is the point. I mean, in Arya, still can have anger arise. A bodhisattva can still have anger arise. So if we're thinking that we want to have an equanimous mind and be rid of anger, attachment, and bias, it's not, it's an advanced thing. Okay, so what he says, what Pabonka Rinpoche says is, one reason our disturbing attitudes increase, even though we engage in advanced practices, is because we have neglected doing the initial and intermediate ones well. So it's the same point. We have to generate these realizations and reorient. We have to kind of reformat the hard drive. And then he goes on to say, furthermore, if we stumble into the higher spiritual practices and have not trained at all in the ones of the modest scope, we will lose everything. Like falling from a high building with no net below, we will smash on the ground of complete spiritual despair. This is what happens if you don't have a strong base. And I've actually witnessed some many episodes of this in people that I know in their spiritual life when they've gotten into especially tantric practices too early and they didn't have the basis. And there was some kind of something working for them in their life for a while. But then when they didn't really have the preliminary practices strong, there wasn't enough to hold it up. It's really like building a building without a stable foundation, and it can only go for so long. And so, I think this is just kind of a reality check. And so for me personally, it's always very helpful to take these warnings to heart and reorient my thinking about what's realistic. And I find that to be quite beneficial, because the more realistic I am, actually the more joyful my mind is, because I'm not like having expectations that are unrealistic and then unmet. So hopefully that will be something that we can all look at and discuss maybe further.